"Worry not, brave adventurer. That sucking gut wound will be better come morning," said no healer ever, unless of course you're playing Dungeons & Dragons. Long rests, with their ability to recover from almost any ailment at the cost of a good night's rest, and not even a great night's rest, are a problem in Dungeons & Dragons. They often break the fiction of the game, as well as ruining our opportunity for challenge. Let's fix it. Hey friends, my name's Timothy, though some people do call me Tim. I'm a professional dungeon master, and here on my channel I help you improve your game of Dungeons & Dragons. Let's get to it, eh? Over the years and editions of Dungeons & Dragons, the rest mechanics have slowly become more and more powerful. D&D 1 is trying to make the most powerful yet, but 5th edition is pretty darn close. When you take a long rest, you're required to have 6 hours of actual rest and 2 hours of light duty in order to recover all of your hit points, half of your hit dice, and recover from most, but not all, status ailments, including 1 level of exhaustion, maximum hit point drain from a lot of special abilities, etc., etc., etc. At the end of that long rest, we also get to recover any of our abilities that have been expended from the day prior, with some very minor exceptions. The problem with long rests by the rules as written is that they break the fiction of the game. You go to bed grievously injured and wake up in tip-top condition, ready to face the day with no problems. Because the rules as written don't require you to take a short rest to recover your hit points by expending hit dice before you take a long rest, I've often seen players utilize those short rest resources only until they get to the point where a long rest will tip them back up to full the next day. They'd rather go to bed risking a possible encounter with 30 or 40 points of damage on their character sheets than spend those hit dice to get back to full. And even though I like to throw natural consequences occasionally, sometimes it can be a little bit too on the nose and a little bit too much of a punishment, when really all they're doing is following the rules as written. One of the other problems with the rest system as it's designed at the moment is that it encourages a video gamey sort of play feel. Rather than saying that we're going to rest overnight and we're going to try and recover our wounds, we use the nice easy term long rest and click a button, often literally on our virtual character sheets, in order to reset all of our stuff and go back to full as if nothing had happened the day before. It breaks the narrative of our story, it makes us think of the game as being very, very gamey, and in the same time also wrecks any opportunity for lasting consequences from day to day, as the challenge is just not there. There are, however, a number of problems with trying to fix long rests that make it to where I can at least understand why the developers have kept them in the game the way they are and why they're pushing towards this system. First, many of the proposed fixes widen the gap between short and long rest dependent characters. Those character classes that regain most of their power on a short rest become increasingly more powerful than those characters that require a long rest in order to recover most of their abilities. That separation and dissonance isn't always a bad thing, and bringing them in line can be worthwhile, but I guess what I'm telling you is that I don't have an answer that is a perfect fix for this system. However, what I do have is a lot of experience tinkering with this system. With over 300 games a year, I get a lot of chances to test different rules out at different tables, and so what I have to suggest here are 4 different options on how we can adjust short and long rests in order to line up the power level that we've got there. And what I hope to do in this video is to arm you with the tools to make a decision that's right for your specific campaign, not just a carte blanche change to the rules that's going to work universally, because that doesn't exist. Alright, let's talk about some options. First and foremost, the gritty realism variant from the Dungeon Master's Guide springs to mind, of course. That variant changes long rests to take a full 7-day rest, while short rests become an 8-hour endeavor. As it says straight in the Dungeon Master's Guide, this variant puts the brakes on the campaign, requiring the players to carefully judge the benefits and drawbacks of combat. Now, I would imagine that there are plenty of your tables or games where that is not what you are necessarily seeking, even as you try to tweak the long rest rules to be a little bit more realistic or to be a little bit more in line with the game balance that you're seeking. And that is largely because a whole bunch of our modern adventures are just not designed to handle a 7-day break in the middle of the end of the world. There are a handful of published adventures out there that do span a great deal of time and would allow this kind of variant to work, but the other side of the coin is that it also greatly and vastly widens the gap between short rest dependent classes and long rest dependent classes. That said, it is a great way to balance out certain encounters and for certain campaigns. If, for instance, you're running the adventure series from the Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos hardcover, or if you're running a homebrew political campaign where there wasn't going to be a whole lot of action in between scenes. Likewise, if in your world it just requires inordinate amounts of time to study your magical prowess in order to regain, then this is the variant for you. It does deliver a very gritty feel and definitely adds at least a modicum of realism to the kind of recovery times that you're going to need after taking a beating. It's still no panacea, but it is not a bad choice if that's the route you want to go. The second option steals a little bit of inspiration from a lot of video games that I grew up playing as a kid, where you can only rest at certain places. In the Storm King's Thunder campaign that I'm running, players are only able to receive the benefits of a long rest if they travel to and rest in a suitable location, namely a village or a town, somewhere that has an inn that they can sleep in a real bed away from the dangers of the trail. I added in the caveat that they could fortify a camp and spend a full 24 hours resting there in order to gain the benefits of a long rest unless they were interrupted. I also made it to where an interruption in that system is far easier to receive. The mere rolling of initiative or encountering of a hostile force essentially spoils a long rest. This has led to some great situations when it comes to the random encounter wandering through the dangers of the savage frontier, and has led the players to plan their routes more carefully and note the distances between various villages and hamlets, asking for directions and ensuring that they have the kinds of supplies that are going to mean that they can take that trek without worrying about whether or not they're going to make it at the other end with enough resources to spare. Option number 3 involves adjusting what long rests restore. If long rests weren't the almost perfect panacea that they currently are, they wouldn't be quite so attractive. Likewise, removing a little bit of the power and bite of a long rest goes a long way towards restoring some of the balance to the game and bridging some of that gap between what seems realistic and what we're doing in our fantasy game with elves. A quick fix is to make it to where long rests no longer restore hit points, but only hit dice. This means you're going to spend your hit dice on short rests in order to recover from your injuries, and your hit dice pool essentially becomes an indicator of how wounded you actually are. Your hit points simply a matter of your fighting spirit. With every day of rest, you recover some from your wounds, but you have to continue to expend if you're in a dangerous situation, and those wounds will continue to grow and add up quickly. This has an added influence of making magical healing that much more magical and awesome. Incidentally, you can also adjust the number of hit dice that are restored on a long rest in order to add to and adjust the challenge and difficulty rating of your game to the degree that you want it to be at. One of the advantages of this system is that it still allows long rest dependent classes to receive the full benefits of a long rest in terms of their spells restored and their access to their cool abilities, so no long rest character has to necessarily feel like the redheaded stepchild of the short rest dependent character. The fourth option is to just adjust what interrupts a long rest. I really liked how simple D&D 1 made it in their suggestion of having rolling initiative as an interruption, but you can go so far as to say the very threat of danger is enough to interrupt your long rest. This will essentially put the nix on your players using long rests in dungeons unless they go to extraordinary lengths. Even when you're hiding in a magical dome like the Leomund's tiny hut, the threat of danger is still there in most dungeons. All it takes is to dispel magic and that sucker's coming down. This encourages your players to at least work for their long rests and to realize that they are a dear and precious resource. Long rests are not, in their rules as written state, actually broken. What they are is not appropriate for every style of play. Not every campaign will work with the rules as written. Not every dungeon master is going to prefer it. Not every player is going to be interested in making it harder or easier to get a full night's sleep. So instead of thinking of long rests as being this rule that needs to be a specific way because it's the rules as written, or a specific variant that's going to apply to all campaigns and all games that you ever run, start thinking about long rests in terms of the dials that you can tweak in order to improve them for the exact style of game that you're looking for. Think about how it's going to feel in play, and definitely think about how you're going to make the various classes feel as well. Once you've done that and decided on it, play around with it. because there's always another opinion. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear yours. How do you or your DM handle long rests at your table? Thanks for watching, happy adventuring, and good luck getting a good rest.